everyone. I warmly welcome you to the second English debate of the year in the senior division. The debate will be conducted in the parliamentary format. There will be two separate rounds. The first round or debate will be between Allen and Cornell House, while the second debate will be between Foy and Pal House. Srimant Roy Chaudhary and Satvik Bhatt will be helping me keep time today. Our judges for today are Mr. Kailash Singh, Ms. Banerjee, Ms. DeCosta, and Mrs. Pundi. May I remind the speakers that they shall be given 3 minutes to express their views. After the speakers of both sides have spoken, the first speaker of each side will present the rebuttal. No POIs will be permitted. We shall begin the first debate between Allen House and Cornell House. The topic they shall be debating on is college and university students should be prohibited from getting involved with political organizations. Without further ado, I shall now invite Kanika Bansal, the Prime Minister of Side Proposition of Allen House, to come and express her views.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As the Prime Minister of the Side Proposition, I shall be focusing on the responsibilities of a college student and why the need to fulfill these responsibilities makes it essential to prohibit college students from getting involved in political organizations. My Deputy Prime Minister will be dwelling on how students can be adversely impacted by involvement in political organizations, while our Chief Whip will throw light on the essence of an institution of higher learning and how its preservation can be jeopardized if its students gravitate towards political outfits. I would like to begin defending my stance by defining one of the key words in the topic: students. The term student refers to individuals registered and recognized as learners in educational institutions like colleges and universities whose purpose is to acquire knowledge and skill to enhance personal development that prepares them for the world of work. Keeping this definition in mind, the primary responsibilities of students is to stay focused on educational and academic pursuits. Engaging in political organizations can lead to distractions, neglect of studies, and compromise their future. Because, let's admit it, it's a tough world out there with cutthroat competition and jobs being increasingly hard to find. When students attend a college or university, they do so to receive a quality education that prepares them for their chosen field. Involvement in political organizations can consume valuable time and energy that should be dedicated to studying, attending classes, completing assignments, and maximizing their chance at success in their chosen field. When students attend a college or university, they do so to receive quality education that prepares them for their chosen careers. A student's responsibilities include being disciplined and focused on their goals. More often than not, students who get affiliated to political groups get involved with minor and major skirmishes both on and off campus. In extreme cases, they even end up getting arrested for contributing to unrest on campus. Students need to keep open minds that are receptive to different theories, principles, forms of research, problem-solving approaches and strategies. Those who adopt a blinkered view of the world and refuse to be accepting of different outlooks and viewpoints lag behind in the professional world. Being part of political organizations can expose students to various ideologies and beliefs that might not align with their academic pursuits. By keeping students away from political activities, we ensure that their education remains free from external influences, allowing them to explore their subjects objectively. Our world, that is torn by strife and violence, needs unbiased, progressive intellectuals who can apply critical thinking to invent, design, develop, and build a future that benefits human beings as a whole. So let students do what they are supposed to do: study, learn, and grow academically, emotionally, and intellectually. Thank you.
Thank you, Kanika. I now invite Isha Lodha, the leader of the opposition team, to express her views.
the penalties for refusing to participate in politics is that you end up being governed by your inferiors. Plato. A very good afternoon to the august gathering present here. Today I, Isha Lodha, as leader of the opposition, will be presenting to you exactly why college and university students should not be prohibited from getting involved with political parties and why side proposition's arguments stand completely null and void. I will be doing so in the form of 3 constructive arguments, after which the deputy leader will be presenting his views on the same, ending with the chief whip summarizing our stance. Firstly, ladies and gentlemen, after hearing the fake, false, and skewed views that side proposition has presented us with today, it is my utmost duty to redefine the topic and give it its correct meaning. Now, when one thinks about political organizations, the first thought that would come to mind would be that of parties like BJP or the Congress. But no, and that's where side proposition has failed right at the beginning. A political organization is any organization that involves itself in the political process, which includes but is not limited to political parties, non-governmental organizations or NGOs, and special interest advocacy groups. So if you think about it, today's side proposition is essentially trying to convince us of the fact that working for NGOs should become illegal for those students. Well, pardon me side proposition, but I cannot even begin to fathom how that is possible when over 89.9% of the people who work and volunteer at said NGOs are college-going students. Which brings me to my second constructive argument for the day. Ladies and gentlemen, one very important aspect that my worthy opponents must take into consideration is that since students at universities have attained the age of 18 years or more, it is legally wrong to prohibit them from doing so. By prohibiting them, side proposition is violating our basic right, which is freedom of association, which encompasses both an individual's right to join or leave a political group voluntarily. Which is why, in conclusion, all I would like to say is that the basis of our political system is the right, ladies and gentlemen, and I repeat, right of our people to make and alter our constitutions of government. Therefore, instead of simply sitting back and complaining, be the change you wish to see in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Isha. I now invite Ananya Goyal, the Deputy Prime Minister of the side proposition, to express her views.
Good afternoon, esteemed judges and the House at large. I, as the Deputy Prime Minister of Side Proposition, will be focusing on how college and university students are involved and they get attached. Good afternoon, esteemed judges and the House at large. I, as the Deputy Prime Minister of Side Proposition, will be focusing on how getting involved with political organization has a detrimental impact on student lives and how they should be forcefully restricted. My first constructive argument is that students, being young, are impressionable, passionate, and impulsive. They are easily being taken advantage of. Political organizations are aware of this, and that is why they like to have student wings. It is easy for them to manipulate students like puppets to promote their personal agendas and ideologies. Students get swayed by their high-sounding statements, principles, then instead of focusing on their academic activities, like debates, discussions, sports, and extra activities, they get caught up with political power struggles, rallies, and demonstrations. In my second constructive argument, I would like to focus on the risk of students being victim of the political violence. Remember the violence that took place on the Jawaharlal Nehru University campus in 2020? As per the report in the New India Expressway, about 35 lives have been lost since 1970s. because the students are getting involved in politics. The recent life was in January, which was of an engineering student who was murdered. The point I'm trying to make is that students themselves create an unsafe environment which hinders their learning process and overall intellectual growth. My third and final constructive argument is that college and university students are at a very crucial stage of their lives. It is only after long and careful deliberations that they choose the course they would like to pursue. They have enough and more on their plates to do so. They have to cope up with hectic college schedules, projects, assignments, preparing for internship opportunities, and the list goes on and on. If they take on the additional and the needless burden to live up to the expectation of the political organizations, they do fall apart. And under all the pressure, they do a very damaging part to their own career because they don't require the ability to get good qualifications, which leads to bad jobs. When they don't find good jobs, depression and frustration sets down the society in general. How can we possibly have a healthy and happy society if its youth has lost focus and thrown away the chances of building bright future for themselves? Therefore, all colleges and universities should focus on enforcing strict code of conduct that prohibits students from getting involved with political organizations of any sort. With this, I rest my voice but not my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Ananya. I now invite Anvay Minocha, the deputy leader of the opposition team, to express their views.
Quote, it is the duty of every citizen, according to his best capacities, to give validity to his convictions in political affairs. Unquote. Albert Einstein. Good afternoon to the House at large. As a deputy leader of the opposition, I'll further strengthen my side stance by further elaborating on the advantages of allowing college and university students to be involved with political organizations. Unlike the olden times, the various aspects of our lives, like education, sports, and politics, can no longer be compartmentalized as they are interlinked and interdependent. My point is that if we are given the right to vote at the age of 18 and are also allowed to have a driving license, why can't we take a keen interest in politics around the same age? If we are considered mature and wise enough to choose a good political leader for the country, why can't we also be interested in what's happening on the political front of our country? The college education is improved through college debates and free speech. If such activities are forbidden, it leads to young minds being conditioned by the management politics instead of developing their own thinking. Universities are nurseries for future politicians, and there is nothing wrong with them starting off at the level, especially with the aim of joining mainstream politics. Now, some may argue that getting involved in politics may interfere with one's academic career, but I would like to remind them that learning about politics alongside other subjects will ensure an overall development of the personality of the youth. It will make them well versed with the ways of the world and how to deal with various adverse situations of life. It also evokes a sense of patriotism. Today's youth may, however, play a pivotal role in the political choices that they might make later on in life. Abstaining young people from politics results in lack of knowledge about what's happening in the country. This results in a lower turnout at elections because young people make a huge proportion of the voting population. So it is important that there are sufficient knowledge about political issues. In conclusion, I would like to say that student activists play a large part in shaping the values of their peers and others across the country. When they embrace political engagement, they prepare themselves to be comprehensive advocates for the rest of the student population and their communities. Thank you.
Good afternoon to the House at large. Today, as Chief Whip of Side Proposition, it is my responsibility to ensure coherence within our team and to uphold the strength of our arguments. I will be talking about the very essence of an institution of higher learning, like a college or a university. would be damaged because of students being involved in political organizations. I will then be consolidating the constructive arguments put forth by my teammates. When students get involved in political organizations, it leads to polarization and division, creating rifts in the student body. Students align themselves with specific ideologies. The polarization may interfere with open dialogue and understanding between diverse groups, which could lead to hostility or conflicts. This leads to a toxic and sometimes violent environment, and in such an environment, the focus shifts from acquiring knowledge and learning to trying to prove which political ideology is superior. This thought leads me to my second constructive argument, which is that intense political activism, protests, and campaigns disrupt regular campus activities. Also, extracurricular activities such as science fest, cultural fest, educational workshops, innovation, creativity, everything that a college or university should be about takes a backseat, and the whole purpose of setting up the institution of higher learning is defeated. Moving on to my final constructive argument. Engaging in controversial political activities on campus may attract negative media attention, which can tarnish the reputation of the college or university. The staff and the administration are then compelled to use their time and resources to try to carry out damage control. The sole attention is focused on trying to keep simmering political discontent from escalating into destructive activities that can cause damage to property and life. So to sum up the stance of side proposition, if we prohibit students from engaging in political activities, we ensure that they are focused on their studies, which is the primary responsibility of every student. If we allow students to be involved in politics, they will adopt a narrow view of the world, refuse to be accepting of different perspectives, and lag behind in the professional world. In extreme cases, they risk becoming victims of political violence. Is that what we want? Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, no university or college can function the way it should if its students get involved in politics. A university's responsibility is to equip students with the knowledge and skills to build successful careers for themselves and to give back to the community in the process. The need of the hour is to keep students away from politics and to allow colleges, universities, and academicians to fulfill their real purpose. Thank you.
Good afternoon to the House at large. Today I, as the Chief Whip of Side Opposition, would like to present my case and consolidate my team stand. Side proposition fails to understand that we are living in the 21st century, where the burden lies with the younger generation to steer the country in the right direction and on the path of peace, progress and stability, which are essential for the development of any nation. And as Dwight Eisenhower said, politics ought to be the part-time profession of every citizen who wants to protect the rights and privileges of free people and who would prevent what is good and fruitful in our national heritage. According to UN, India has the largest youth population and more than 65% of the population is below the age of 35. Which means that they have a major say in the politics of India. Therefore, the students need to be well informed about their constitution, their duties, their rights, and their countries, as well as the various political parties and their agendas. This will help them to inculcate a sense of responsibility and awareness of the societal problems. Ladies and gentlemen, when the youth of a nation comes together with a collective intention, it is an indomitable force. If we go back to history, we realize that some of the most prominent personalities who brought about a major socio-political change were the youth of that time. Let me remind you, if it wasn't for the active participation of the youth of yesteryears like Martin Luther King Jr. and Bhagat Singh, the history of their countries would have been very different today. In conclusion, I think it is high time that side proposition looks at the world with open eyes and starts thinking about the future now. We need to address that every person has the right to participate in any organization they please. Also, side proposition, if you think that dictating a person's actions is right, then I think you are living in a highly grotesque and comical bubble of illusions. Thank you.
I now invite Prime Minister of Side Proposition, to deliver her remarks. I would request you all to sit up.
Good afternoon once again. I am here to affirm our stance in this debate by proving how the opposition is wrong today. The first speaker just revolved her debate around as to how we, the proposition, are opposed to people helping in NGO. Let me tell you all, nowhere in our debate have we told this that students should not be should not help the people in need or those like NGOs and all. I think that they have failed to understand that there are other political organizations too, which students should not get involved in and waste their time. We are not breaking human rights, we are thinking for the betterment of the students so that they can focus on their studies. Then the second speaker said that what if students want to take part in political organization and choose their career in that field. So I would like to prove them wrong by saying that students should first get to know the base, the principle of politics before getting involved in political organization. If even if they are studying for getting into politics, and that's why they should be involved so that they have an idea about it without getting their base and their principle about what they're getting themselves into is not right. And then the third speaker said that how can you say that, let me tell you, how can you say that to protect the world, the students need to get involved in political organization? The students who go to study in colleges and university, they are just a bunch of young adults who do not clearly know about the politics and how politics is just a dirty game. And if they will get involved, then their attitude towards it will change and then they'll just be like the other politicians you can see these days. In conclusion, I urge you to let students do what they are supposed to do, and that is studying, learning and growing into a responsible young adults before they get themselves involved into something they're not ready for. Thank you.
Before I invite Isha to come up on stage and present her views, I would request you all to sit up. This is the second time I'm doing it. Thank you so much. Isha, I would request you to come up on stage.
With the due permission of the chair. Well, after hearing side proposition's arguments, I think it's pretty safe to say that their arguments were like a cloud. When they disappear, it's a beautiful day. Now, I will be using these precious 2 minutes that I have been given to finally win you over onto side opposition. So a lot was said about how, especially by the first speaker, about how politics is a so-called dirty game and how students should focus on their main goal, which is studying. And to that, I would simply like to ask, what's the difference between a robot and you? You can think for yourselves. So don't be like that robot and think that your only goal in life is to sit and study because it's the changes that you make in and around yourselves that impact lives. Now, my worthy opponent spoke very passionately about how we should not participate in political organizations, and I hope that they know that the reason why more and more students are getting involved in politics is primarily that student elections are viewed as stepping stones to national level politics, which ultimately leads to wealth and power. An outstanding example of which is Atal Bihari Vajpayee, the former Prime Minister of India, who himself got his first start at university campaigns. If I'm not wrong, he was later awarded many prestigious awards such as the Bharat Ratna, the Padma Bhushan, and the Lokmanya Tilak Award. Now, do you believe that he managed to do all of that just by thinking that all he had to do at that age was sit and study? I think not. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, the youth of today is the future of tomorrow, and denying them their basic right to practice being future leaders would be of immense deprivation to our society. And with that, I hope to have convinced you of the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan and Thomas. You may take your seats in the audience. I now request the speakers of Foy House and Pal House to take their places on stage. We shall now begin with the second debate between Foy House and Pal House. Their topic is waste management is solely the responsibility of the government. I now request the leader of the opposition team, Aisha Singh, to present her views. Leader of the Prime Minister of the proposition team, Aisha Singh, to present her views. My apologies. I request the Prime Minister, Achintya Bansal, of the proposition team to express his views.
Good afternoon to the House at large. Today we as side proposition will be proving or rather proposing the idea that waste management is solely the responsibility of the government. Ladies and gentlemen, as the Prime Minister of side proposition, it is my duty to tell you the roadmap as to how today we are going to present our case. So I'll be defining the key term and will build the foundation of our today's case. The Deputy Prime Minister will dwell upon the different kinds of waste that are present today and will tell you how the government today has the access, authority and resources to implement waste management. The Chief Whip will then dwell upon the various examples and facts that consolidate our team stand. Ladies and gentlemen, the main key word in today's debate is waste management. And let me break it to you, it is not just throwing garbage into a proper colored bin, but it is a process which has various processes involved which I'll be dwelling upon later. So to start with my first constructive argument, I would like to state that the number of landfills in the world today is tremendous. And as per many projections, by 2040 only, we won't be having any space left to accommodate waste. Therefore, waste management is ultimately necessary in today's world, and to implement it on a mass scale, government intervention is required. Governments need to take responsibility and make sure that the waste collected by them is segregated, because ground level segregation is the first and the initial step towards waste management. I would also like to lay emphasis on the fact that there are various processes involved in waste management, like education, recycling, reusing, etc. Therefore, it should be the government's responsibility to make sure that the waste collected by it is put to proper use. Like, the government of India completed the construction of 703 kilometers of highway roads using plastic waste. Now let me take the liberty to conduct a poll. How many of you know where is the recycling station in Mussoorie? Well, that is smart, because there is no such thing like a recycling station in Mussoorie. Therefore, what the governments need to do today is to expand their social infrastructure, which aims to provide facilities to the society, and increase their economic growth by constructing more recycling stations. I would also like to lay emphasis on the fact that a factor that plays a major role in waste management is the amount of waste that is generated. And let me break it to you that there are no strict rules to regulate waste generation. A simple 200 to 300 rupees product comes in 3 layers of packaging, out of which 2 layers are single-use plastic. With this, in the end, I would like to say that side opposition today will probably be constructing a building which will be very delicate, and the fall of this building will be imminent. Thank you.
Thank you, Achita. I now request Aisha Singh, the leader of the opposition team, to present her views.
The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. These words by Robert Swan echo the essence of the challenge we face today: waste management. Good afternoon to the House at large. Throughout history, societies have grappled with the mismanagement of waste, leaving behind a legacy of triumphs and failures. From the ancient streets of Rome to the smog-choked cities of the Industrial Revolution, the consequences of neglecting waste have reverberated across time and borders. As we stand on the precipice of a new era, the responsibility to address this issue falls upon us, just as it did on those who came before and will for those who follow. However, it is imperative to recognize that this burden cannot be borne solely by the government. Rather, it is a collective duty that demands the unwavering commitment from every individual, community, and nation, which is exactly what side opposition plans to prove to the jury today in precisely 5 constructive arguments, them being collective responsibility for waste generation and private sector innovation, which will be addressed by me, Aisha Singh, as the Prime Minister of side opposition today, and community engagement, financial constraints, and the government, which will be tackled by the Deputy Minister of the Opposition. Beginning with the first construct, waste is not an isolated outcome. It arises from the collective choices we make in our consumption-driven society. Blaming the government alone is a disservice, as citizens and businesses are the architects of waste, designing it with every unneeded purchase and careless disposal. A reality where waste management becomes a shared ethos is what side opposition envisions today. It's high time, side proposition, that we dispel this illusion that waste appears magically for the government to clean up. Consider the example of Kenya's plastic bag ban in 2017. The government took a bold step in addressing plastic pollution, but the effectiveness of the ban largely depended on the public's willingness to embrace alternative practices. It is you who makes a difference. It is I who makes a difference. And it is us who make a difference. Transitioning to my second argument, we emphasize the role of private sector innovation. Businesses, ladies and gentlemen, are often criticized for overconsumption, possess the potential to be catalysts for change. Now imagine a world where corporations are not solely profit-driven but also environmentally conscious. This world sees packaging evolve into biodegradable artistry. Supply chains align with recycling mandates, and eco-friendly alternatives emerge as innovation icons. The concept is exemplified by Loop, a transformative initiative by TerraCycle. This venture turns everyday products into reusable vessels, redefining the paradigm of packaging. Procter & Gamble, Nestle, and Unilever's involvement underscores the private sector's capacity to drive change. This is about pursuing a planet where waste is transformed into a canvas of innovation painted by the deft strokes of the private sector's ingenuity. In conclusion, dismissing the notion that waste management is solely the government's responsibility isn't an insult to side proposition today. Rather, it's a recognition of the short sight and headlong stance side proposition stands for today. Relying solely on one entity to tackle a complex issue like waste management is completely impractical and naive. It's time to move beyond such simplistic thinking and embrace a collaborative approach that engages citizens, businesses, and organizations. A healthier environment demands collective action, not blind allegiance to outdated beliefs. Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha. I now request Tejasvi Tolia, the Deputy Prime Minister of Side Proposition, to present her views.
Refuse what you do not need. Reuse what you do need. Reuse what you consume. Recycle what you cannot refuse, reduce, or reuse. And drop the rest. Unquote. B. Johnson. Good morning to the August gathering. Today, as the Deputy Prime Minister of Side Proposition, I think the meaning of management should be redefined for the benefit of the judges and side opposition. Management means the act or skill of dealing with people in a successful way. Starting with, we have different types of waste: nuclear waste, biomedical waste, agricultural waste, household waste, e-waste, and the list just keeps going. Now, does the side opposition think that normal people like us have authority over nuclear power plants, factories, and even various farms? Are they aware of the different kinds of waste that is generated every day and how improperly they are being managed? All those chemicals just flowing down water bodies and waste in farms just getting burned up by farmers, causing immense air pollution? Who do you think can control these people for the benefit of the country? The government. Who do you think can come up with different ways in order for effective waste management to be a success? The government. Who do you think these people will obey without any hesitation? The government. Now, the side opposition might bring up the argument that the government is always entertained. So how do you expect them to pay attention to every single detail about who's throwing what where? Here, I would like to give the example of Singapore, where offenders are fined $300 for littering, which includes a small candy wrapper. And as we all know, Singapore is one of the cleanest countries in the world. Now, how does Singapore do this? Well, you see, their government has launched various programs and have come up with different inventions to supervise degenerated waste. So evidently, it's just a little compulsion that is required to get to everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, the government is not just one or two people. It consists of a network of people working under them, and they have the authority to add more people to them. Therefore, the side opposition's belief today that commoners have the capability to manage waste effectively in a non-toxic way and successfully is wrong. Another question that may spring up is, how do you expect such a change to take place in a vast country like India? Well, then maybe side opposition has forgotten all about the demonetization of rupees 500 and rupees 1000 notes that took place in 2016. Within 50 days, yes, 50 days, the government was capable of removing billions of notes worth thousands of dollars from the country. In conclusion, we must insist to the government on how important it is for effective waste management to take place if they take charge. Thank you.
Thank you, Tejasvi. I now invite Ishita Maleta, the Deputy Leader of the Opposition Team, to express her views.
With the permission of the Chair. Good afternoon to the House at large. Today, I, Ishita Maleta, the Deputy Prime Minister of Pal House, stand before you with three constructive arguments to further consolidate my team's stance. I would like to bring to attention the key phrase of this topic: solely the government's responsibility. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this implies that side proposition believes that the entire burden of waste management, from its inception to its very final disposal, weighs on the government's shoulders. Firstly, I would like to speak about the government's actual role in this entire process. The Government of India has undertaken various waste management schemes for our benefit, some of them being Swachh Bharat Mission, Jal Shakti Abhiyan and Gobardhan Scheme. As per the Constitution of India, it is the primary responsibility of state governments to ensure that appropriate solid waste management practices are introduced in all of the cities and towns in the state. Let me repeat, primary responsibility of state governments to ensure. Authorities are simply responsible for implementing these rules and regulations. Waste management is a collective effort, and only when the citizens carry out their duty can the government carry out theirs. In my second constructive argument, I will be emphasizing on the financial constraints of our government. Major chunks of the government's budget are utilized in various sectors, such as agriculture, rural and urban development, social welfare, and transport. The growth and progress of these sectors ultimately results in the growth and progress of our standard of living. Thus, our government's efforts need to be recognized and they must not go in vain and be brushed under the rug simply because we are too lazy to segregate our own waste. Which brings me to my third and final constructive argument: individual responsibility to our community. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to refresh your memory of something that has been appearing in your textbooks since the very third grade. Reduce, minimize the amount of waste generated. Reuse, repeat the use of usable items. And recycle, utilize used resources for a new purpose. All of these can be achieved only and solely from the hands of the primary generators of waste, which refers to people like you and me, not the government. If side proposition truly believes that waste management is nothing but solely the government's responsibility, they are living in a world of delusion, playing a game of passing the blame. I would like to conclude my speech with a quote: "With great power comes great responsibility." Living in a country of 1.42 billion people, each one having the power to generate an estimated 744 kgs of waste annually, it is our responsibility to manage our waste appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you, Ishita. I now invite Samriti Singh, the Chief Whip of Side Proposition, to express her view.
Good afternoon to the House at large. Today, as the Chief Whip of the side proposition, I would like to present my case and consolidate my team's stance. I would like to start by giving the example of the Delhi landfills. Delhi has three major dump sites: Ghazipur, Okhla, and Bhalswa. The three dump sites are cumulatively covering an area of 200 acres, carrying almost 28 million tons of legacy waste. Here's a fun fact: the Ghazipur waste disposal site's potential was surpassed over a decade ago, but it still receives more than 2,500 tons of waste each day. The Bhalswa dump site continues to stand more than 60 meters high and 50 acres broad, approximately equivalent to 50 football fields and a 17-story building. In 2017, these dump sites led to the cause of the death of 2 people. As per the World Air Quality Report published in 2022, Delhi is the world's most populated capital city for the 4th year in a row. So, how are we supposed to tackle this tremendous issue? Well, there are very straightforward solutions to our problems, no matter how pretentious the side opposition might make them seem. The first action plan for limiting a waste site is the need to promote waste segregation. The government can easily manage this. A monetary reward for the individual generators and people who are genuinely working hard and following the government's guidelines to segregate waste. Next, landfill covering must be meticulously designed and carried out using scientific methodology. There is no explanation of how long it will be before waste from these very land spaces starts flowing into the city.
there is only one entity in this world that can implement these rules and stop waste from taking over our homes, and that is the government. Another management approach that is already being implemented in many states of India is the biomining of these garbage dumps. Biomining entails the removing of waste from landfills, sorting it, treating it, and reclaiming the landfill ground. Biomining can only be mandated by the Government of India under the Solid Waste Management Rules of 2016. This furthermore shows beyond doubt that only the government gets to make the call on how to manage waste. The side opposition today might try to sway us by giving us the examples of NGOs who are working hard to clear waste. But my previous examples have provided concrete proof that a righteous person or a group of righteous people cannot make a difference without the support and resources provided exclusively by the government. A superhero saving the world from mass destruction only turns out to be a blockbuster in movies, not in real life. Now, I shall educate the audience and the side opposition on one of the various policies that the Government of India has signed with Germany on technical cooperation to reduce waste, titled Cities Combating Plastic Entering the Marine Environment. Some of the various achievements of this agreement are: improved procedures for the collection, recycling and segregation of plastic were demonstrated in the cities of Kerala, Kochi and Port Blair. Capacities for managing plastic and knowledge exchange were strengthened in Kanpur and as well as the Andaman and Nicobar Islands and Uttar Pradesh. The national framework for managing plastic was strengthened. I am sure with the examples and information that I have provided in my debate, I have built an impenetrable case for side proposition. Thank you.
Thank you, Samruddhi. I now invite Sarthak Jain, the Chief Whip of Side Opposition, to express his views.
A wise man once said, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." That man was Mahatma Gandhi. Following his ideologies and principles, India has become a great nation. Greetings to the August gathering. I, as the Chief Whip of Side Opposition, will be summarizing the points made by my Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister, and be concluding once and for all that waste management is not solely the responsibility of the government. Ladies and gentlemen, waste is not created by the government alone. It is the collective action of individuals, households, businesses, and industries. Placing the entire burden of waste management on governments is ignoring the role each individual plays in generating waste. Ladies and gentlemen, by 2025, the waste management market size in India is projected to be worth $15 billion with an annual growth of around 7%. Driven by market forces and competition, private companies will develop effective waste management techniques which will bring innovation and technological advancements that will ensure a more robust waste management framework. In fact, European Investment Bank financed a private-public partnership model between Viridor Lang, Ineos Rumcon, TPS Greater Manchester Waste Disposal Authority for a project which resulted in an increase in recycling and composting by 50% and diverted 65% of the waste from landfills. Ladies and gentlemen, the government faces competing priorities and limited resources, which impact their ability to invest adequately in waste management, infrastructure and services. By relying solely on the government, we risk underfunded and subpar waste management framework. Private sector partnership and community initiative can provide additional financial resources and ensure a robust waste management framework. Ladies and gentlemen, we look to the UN to provide us guidance in many fields. But today, side proposition has very conveniently overlooked some management approaches as suggested by the UN. The UN recommends private-public partnership model for sustainable waste management under a document named Best Strategies and Innovative Approaches for Sustainable Waste Management. Yet, side proposition continues to put the entire burden on the government. Ending my speech, I quote, "We are only as strong as we are united, and as weak as we are divided." J.K. Rowling. Thank you.
Sagar, I now invite Asha Singh, leader of the opposition, to deliver her rebuttal.
Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed members of the House, I must say, listening to the proposition's arguments has been nothing short of enlightening. It's really fascinating how they've managed to simplify the intricate issue of waste management into a neatly packaged government responsibility. I mean, who would have thought that all we needed to do was hand over our trash to the government and voila, problem solved. Side proposition, I must reiterate to you once more, we're talking about whether the government holds sole responsibility or not. The key word of today's debate isn't in fact waste management, but solely, which goes to prove how side proposition has completely overlooked the entire motion today, and the example of Singapore, a country smaller in mass size than New Delhi, once again has proved that they indeed are living life under the guise of rose-colored lenses. To begin with, the proposition argues that the government's authority and resources make it the sole capable guardian of waste management. However, let's not forget that a government's focus is vast and multifaceted. Expecting it to manage every intricate aspect of waste from generation to disposal is akin to asking a single soldier to conquer an entire battlefield. The rather insubstantial and overly theatrical poll and conclusion tactic proved exactly that the government cannot invest in regional ecological development because there is simply no economic and sensible way to create them, which is why it cannot be the sole responsible entity. Furthermore, the proposition may contend that imposing strict regulations is the panacea for waste management. While regulations play a crucial role, it is foolish to assume that heavy-handed mandates alone will solve the problem. History has taught us that true change arises from a blend of regulations, education, and personal responsibility. An approach that heaps all responsibility on the government is reminiscent of a parent-child dynamic. In an attempt to magnify the government's role, the proposition has overlooked and inadvertently disregarded the power of collective action. We are not bystanders awaiting governmental intervention. We are active stakeholders capable of shaping our very own environment. To insinuate that citizens are mere onlookers in this endeavor insults our agency, intelligence, and autonomy. But let's get back to reality, shall we? Waste management is indeed a shared responsibility, but to claim that the government is the sole savior is a tad bit naive, don't you think? Waste management requires collective effort, not a monologue of government intervention. So, proposition, while your arguments may sound like the plot of a charming fairy tale, I'd like to invite you to join us in the realm of reality. Let's work together to address waste management sensibly, recognizing that citizens, businesses, and yes, the government all play vital roles in this complex puzzle. Thank you for entertaining the narrative proposition. It's been an enlightening journey into the world of oversimplification and wishful thinking. Signing off, Leader of Opposition, proud to oppose. Thank you.
Thank you, Asha. I now invite Achintya Bansal, Prime Minister of Side Proposition, to deliver his rebuttal.
Good afternoon once again to the House at large. Ladies and gentlemen, the friendship between logic and side opposition today is just like the friendship between snow and fire. They have completely neglected the fact that a government is the most powerful entity in a country, and as it can collect taxes efficiently by putting a ton of bricks on the heads of the defaulters, it can also collect waste in the same way, that is by putting a lot of bricks on the heads of the defaulters, that is by making laws and enforcing them properly. They have also neglected the fact that common public does not have the resources and education to practice waste management properly. Therefore, it is the government's responsibility to first educate the people and then enforce those laws on the ones who have got to know about waste management. Also, we are not saying that people should be punished for not following the rules, maybe put in a jail. But what can we do is, maybe we can fine the defaulters, or rather give tax benefits to the people who are following the rules and regulations, which will be formulated after we implement proper waste management by giving the responsibility to the government. And I repeat, by giving the sole responsibility to the government. The second speaker in her debate said, and I quote, "Waste management burdens the government." And the third speaker in his debate also repeated the word burden. But I don't understand over here that do you get burdened with the responsibility which you have voluntarily taken? I don't think so, because whenever I get a responsibility which I wanted, I really get excited about it and want to do it more efficiently. One of the speakers also said that with great power comes great responsibility. She was absolutely right with this for the first time, but she completely forgets over here that we as the people of this nation and the population of other nations mostly have done their responsibility and chosen their right government. Therefore, we cannot just say that it is the people's responsibility as well, because what is the responsibility of the people is to follow the rules and regulations made by the government. By just launching Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, nothing will happen, because there the government gives a choice to the people to follow waste management rules. But by making laws like Singapore, Norway, Finland and so many other countries have done, change is seen. With this, I would like to say that in the beginning, I said that side opposition today will be constructing a building that will be very delicate, and the form of that building is imminent. And here I prove my point, because this building is made of sand, and the fall of this building does not even require water, because that can happen through a gust of air as well. Thank you.